The first thing she took was not my car. It was the idea of it. "Mom, I really don't think you should be driving right now," Caroline said it casually. Standing in my kitchen with one hand around a green juice and the other scrolling through a phone, she checked more often than weather. Casually is how people attempt theft when they want to seem kind. I buttered toast. Right now when? Lately. I looked up. I was 73, not vapor. Define lately, she sighed. The confusion, the fatigue, you looked tired after church. I looked bored during the sermon. That's not funny. It was to me. She hated when humor made her sound dramatic. Caroline was 47, beautifully maintained, permanently urgent, and convinced that efficiency was a moral virtue. She had moved back into my house 3 months earlier after separating from her husband Mark, for clarity. Clarity arrived with 6 suitcases, scented candles, and opinions about my cupboards. At first, I had welcomed the company. Widowhood makes silence louder than clocks. My husband Walter had been gone 4 years. Some evenings I still set out 2 mugs by habit. So when Caroline called crying and said she just needed a short reset, I said yes. Short reset, the family cousin of temporary. Then came adjustments. My pantry relabeled, the thermostat lowered. The guest room converted into her office. My armchair moved for flow. My mail stacked into categories I had never requested. And now, apparently, my driving privileges under review. I bit into toast. I drove to church. You almost missed the turn. I slowed for pedestrians. There were none. There might have been. She pressed fingers to her temple. Mom, this defensiveness worries me. There it was. Concern used as crowbar. I folded my napkin. What exactly are you proposing? Nothing extreme, which always means something extreme. I just think maybe I should hold your keys for a bit. I laughed, not kindly. Her face tightened. You're proving my point. No, I said. I'm disproving your timing. She left the kitchen muttering about safety. I finished breakfast and wrote in my notebook. Date, 8:14 a.m. Caroline requested surrender of keys. Reason cited, invented decline. Always keep notes when someone begins documenting you verbally. Walter taught me that. He had spent 32 years in commercial lending and believed that memory was useful but paper was merciless. That afternoon I drove myself to the grocer. Perfectly, parked straight. Reversed cleanly, bought pears, tea, and batteries. When I returned, Caroline was in the hallway speaking softly to someone on speaker. Yes, she still insists on driving. Pause. No, she gets angry when I bring it up. Pause. I'm worried she'll hurt someone. I stopped behind the doorway and listened. Useful habit. I know, she whispered. I may need legal advice if she refuses. Interesting. Not doctor, not mechanic. Lawyer. I entered loudly enough to startle her. She jumped. Who was that? No one. Then no one has a soothing baritone. She ended the call. You shouldn't sneak. You shouldn't rehearse. She stormed upstairs. I wrote another note. 3:42 p.m. Caroline consulting someone Ray. Refusal. Likely legal. Tone manipulative. That evening Daniel came for dinner. My son was 42, charming, underemployed, and accidentally perceptive. He arrived with wine he had not paid retail for. Caroline served pasta with the martyrdom of a woman cooking for critics. Halfway through, she said, Daniel, don't you think Mom's driving has become concerning? He looked at me, then at her, then wisely chose noodles first. In what sense? She's slower. I'm seated, I said. She gets distracted. By your talking. Daniel, he sighed, I think Mom drives better than you. I nearly applauded. Caroline pushed back her chair. This family never takes anything seriously. No, Daniel said, we just sort your panic into categories. She left the table, door upstairs, heel sounds. Cupboard slam for punctuation. After dinner, Daniel helped dry dishes. She's serious, he said quietly. I know, she asked me last week if I thought you were forgetting things. And what did you say? That you forget patience around her. Good boy, he lowered his voice. She also asked if your insurance was current. I turned slowly. Why? No idea. We both knew that was false. He hated conflict enough to underanswer. That night I opened Walter's old desk. Bottom drawer, green file box labeled important later. Inside, policies, deeds, warranties, one cream envelope. For June, if anyone questions your driving. I sat down before opening it. My June, if Caroline ever challenges your driving, assume she wants something parked in your place. Do not argue first. Test brakes, mirrors, and motives. Arthur Bell's number is enclosed. He still owes me a favor and hates nonsense. Love, Walter P.S. If she says safety, check what she wants access to. I laughed until tears came. Even dead, he knew our child. Inside was Arthur Bell's card. Attorney at law, estate, property, trust matters. Still practicing, interesting. The next morning Caroline appeared cheerful, always suspicious. I booked you an eye exam. No, it's already scheduled. Then it may enjoy your attendance. Mom, you mistake planning for permission. She inhaled sharply. I'm trying to help. You are trying to pre-approve. I took my keys from the bowl. She stepped forward. Please don't drive angry. Then stop manufacturing traffic. I left. But instead of the grocer, I drove downtown. Brick building above a pharmacy. Brass plaque, Arthur Bell. The receptionist looked up. Do you have an appointment? No, I said. But I have Walter Whitaker's name. That still opened doors. 10 minutes later, Arthur Bell entered with a cane, sharp eyes, and the expression of a man disappointed by most people on principle. June Whitaker, he said. Trouble? Caroline, he nodded immediately. Come in. Arthur Bell's office smelled of leather, dust, and expensive caution. Bookshelves lined 2 walls. Certificates lined a third. The fourth held a framed photograph of Arthur shaking hands with a governor nobody remembered. He lowered himself into his chair and studied me over half-moon glasses. How bad? She wants my keys, he nodded once. Then it's about something else. Useful man, I handed him my notebook, dates, comments, questions about insurance, mentions of safety. Interest in my schedule, the overheard legal call. He read in silence, occasionally grunting like a mechanic inspecting damage. Finally, he set it down. Has she asked about the house? Indirectly, meaning yes. Has she asked about accounts? Indirectly, meaning definitely yes. He steepled his fingers. June, people rarely challenge independence for one item. They challenge it because independence blocks access. I sat straighter. What access? Convenience first, assets second. Authority third. He opened a file drawer and removed a slim folder with my name already tabbed. Walter had clearly kept his promises organized. Inside were copies of my deed, trust summary, healthcare directives, and durable power forms. I reviewed these with Walter before he died, Arthur said. He was very clear. About what? That Caroline confuses management with love. I laughed so suddenly Arthur smiled. Rare event, he continued. Your trust names both children as equal remainder beneficiaries after your death. During your life, all authority is yours unless legally adjudicated otherwise. Meaning no one gets to helpfully take your keys, your car, your accounts, or your house because they feel dramatic. Excellent language for a lawyer. He slid a card toward me. Driver assessment specialist. Independent, retired police examiner. If you wish to end the driving argument cleanly, book this man. Objective report. Hard to spin. I pocketed the card. And if she escalates, Arthur's eyes sharpened. Then let her. Interesting answer. He leaned forward. Do not surrender because someone creates noise. Let them overplay. On the drive home, I considered how often women my age are trained to reduce friction by giving things up. Keys, rooms, money, peace. By the time I reached the driveway, I had decided on none of the above. Inside, Caroline was waiting in the kitchen, arms folded, phone face down on the counter, danger posture. Where were you? Out. You missed the eye appointment. I was seeing someone with better eyesight, she stared. You went to a lawyer. I smiled slowly. You said legal advice first. Her face flushed. I was talking to a friend. Who bills hourly? She hated when guessing landed. I'm trying to protect you. From what? Yourself. Specific examples. You're slower. I am 73. You get tired. I hosted 6 people at Christmas. You forget little things. I Forget to indulge nonsense. She stepped closer. I'm serious. So am I. I removed a folded sheet from my handbag. Arthur had printed my trust summary. I placed it on the counter. She glanced down, then up, then down again. What is this? The reminder that concern is not ownership. Her jaw tightened. I never said ownership. No, you implied stewardship. Worse costume. Mark entered then, carrying dry cleaning. He froze, useful timing. Caroline pointed at me. She went to a lawyer. Mark looked at me, then at her, then said the bravest thing he had likely said all month. You started it. Silence. Even I admired him. Caroline stared as if witnessing furniture speak. What? You've been talking about her keys, the car, the house, appointments. Nonstop. I'm worried. No, he said quietly, you're planning. There it was, straight from the husband. She turned pale, then angry. You always undermine me. I usually hide. That one almost made me laugh. Daniel arrived mid-scene with takeaway coffee. He looked around. Oh good, we're open. I waved him in. Your sister is worried. He handed me a latte. Again, Caroline snapped. You both think I'm some villain. No, Daniel said. I think you're scared and using spreadsheets. She threw up her hands. You know what? Fine, keep driving, crash into a tree. Mark closed his eyes. I set down my coffee. You'll apologize now, she blinked. What? Now, this is ridiculous. No, I said softly. Ridiculous was trying to stage decline before lunch. Mark whispered, Caroline. She looked around the room. No allies, no witnesses willing. Then muttered, I'm sorry. Full sentence. I'm sorry for saying that. Better. She stormed upstairs, door slam. Daniel sipped his drink. So. How was the lawyer? Productive, he grinned. Can we keep him? The next morning I called the driver assessment specialist. Harold Finch, retired traffic officer. Voice like gravel reading scripture. He booked me for Friday. When I told Daniel, he laughed. You're getting professionally certified out of spite. No, I said. Out of paperwork. Friday came bright and cold. Harold arrived with clipboard, stopwatch, and zero interest in feelings. We did vision checks, reaction drills, parking maneuvers, lane merges, emergency stops, parallel parking, mirror awareness, route memory. I passed everything. Twice. At the end, he signed a formal report, fit to drive without restriction. He looked at me. Better than average. I accepted the paper. Would you write that larger? He did. When I returned home, Caroline was in the living room with two women from her yoga group drinking herbal tea and discussing aging parents. Perfect. I entered smiling. Ladies, they turned. I handed Caroline the report in front of them all. She read the heading, then the next line, then the enlarged comment. Her face became art. One of the women said, Oh. That's wonderful. I replied, Yes, I do so hate being prematurely retired. Daniel, listening from the hallway, nearly died trying not to laugh. Caroline folded the paper carefully, too carefully. Which meant this was not over. Good, I was just warming up. That evening, Caroline was pleasant, too pleasant. She made salmon, set the table properly, asked Daniel about work. Complimented my sweater, laughed at one of Mark's timid jokes. Anyone unfamiliar with her would have called it growth. I called it repositioning. At dessert, she served lemon tart and said, I've been thinking. There it was, the phrase people use before presenting plans that cost others. I'm thrilled, I said. She ignored me. You're right. Maybe I came on too strong. Mark looked startled enough to drop his fork. Daniel mouthed wow at no one. I nodded. Continue. I just want to make sure things are organized for the future. Future again. Whenever people want today, they discuss tomorrow. She slid a folder toward me. Color tabs, printed labels. Charts, of course, I opened it. Inside, family continuity plan. I nearly applauded the branding. Page 1 listed risk factors. Age-related decline, isolation, driving exposure. Property maintenance burden, medication complexity. I looked up. Have I joined a volcano? Caroline pressed on. If anything sudden happened, we'd all be scrambling. This just creates structure. Define structure. Shared access to key information. Meaning, copies of deeds, account contacts, passwords, emergency authority. There, she blinked. What? The actual paragraph. Mark slowly leaned back in his chair. Daniel whispered, she speedran to theft. Caroline snapped, will you stop? No, I said. He's helping, she inhaled sharply. I am trying to prevent chaos. You are trying to pre-own my widowhood. Even Mark muttered, Jesus. She turned to him. Are you seriously against planning? He answered quietly. I'm against pretending planning only helps one person. Useful man continued evolving. I closed the folder, then set it beside my plate. You may have one item, her eyes widened. What? One item of future planning. She leaned forward hopefully. Which? I smiled. My funeral playlist. Daniel choked on tart. Caroline stood so abruptly her chair scraped the floor. This family treats me like a joke. No, I said, we treat your methods like a joke. She left the room, upstairs door, heel sounds. Cupboard slam for nostalgia. Mark covered his face. I'm so tired. Yes, he looked up. What do I do? Choose whether you want peace or proximity. He stared at me. That sounds like something Walter would say. He charged less. The next morning I discovered my car keys missing. Not lost, missing. I knew because I keep them in a ceramic bowl by the hallway mirror, handle facing east like civilized people. The bowl was empty. I stood very still, then called out, Caroline, no answer. Again louder, she appeared at the top of the stairs in workout clothes and innocence. Yes, where are my keys? I moved them. To where? Safe place. I laughed once, hard. Bring them, you're upset. Bring them. She descended halfway. I think we need one calm day before you drive. You think many things unsupported by law. She folded her arms. This anger is exactly why I'm concerned. Mark appeared behind her, already looking defeated. Caroline, no, Mark, someone has to be responsible. I took my phone out. She frowned. What are you doing? Calling the police. Her face emptied instantly. You wouldn't. I would prefer locksmiths and funerals never involve family, yet here we are. Mark rushed down the stairs. Caroline, give her the keys. She's being dramatic. No, I said. I am escalating properly. Daniel entered through the front door carrying bagels. He stopped. Did I miss breakfast or democracy? Your sister stole my keys. He set the bag down slowly. Oh, Caroline snapped, I did not steal them. Then whose are they? She hesitated. Useful pause. Mark held out his hand. Now, for once, she obeyed. She reached into her gym bag and produced the keys. Interesting hiding place. Close to self-improvement. I accepted them, then dialed anyway. She panicked. What are you doing? Canceling a tow I was about to arrange for an abandoned gym bag. Daniel laughed so violently he had to lean on the wall. I put the phone away. Caroline looked near tears. You humiliate me. You keep bringing tools. I took my coat. Where are you going? She asked. To demonstrate continued mobility. I drove directly to Arthur Bell's office. He listened in silence while I described the key incident, then removed his glasses. She physically withheld access to your vehicle. Yes. In the house you own. Yes. While attempting authority she does not possess. Yes, he smiled thinly. Good, good, yes. Facts have ripened. He drafted a letter immediately. Formal notice. Interference with personal autonomy. Unauthorized seizure of personal property. Further incidents may trigger immediate occupancy termination. He printed 2 copies, one for me, one couriered today. I admired efficiency. When I returned home, Caroline was in the kitchen crying over tea, real tears perhaps, or strategic hydration. I placed the envelope on the table. What's that? Boundaries with letterhead. She opened it, read 3 lines, then looked stricken. You had a lawyer send me a notice. No, I said. You had a lawyer send you a notice. Mark, standing by the sink, nearly smiled. She whispered, you'd throw me out over keys. No, over patterns. That word stayed in the room like smoke. For once, no one argued. That night the house was so quiet I could hear the old radiator ticking in the hall. Progress often sounds mechanical. The next afternoon, Lily knocked on my bedroom door. Properly, come in. She stepped inside holding my spare key ring. I found these in Mom's desk drawer. Interesting girl. There, attached by faded tag, were duplicates of front door, back door. Garage, my filing cabinet, and my car. I looked up slowly. How long have these existed? She had them made last month. I sat down, not from weakness, from scale. This had never been about driving. It had been about access. I thanked Lily, gave her chocolate, and wrote one line in my notebook. Today the game changed. I slept badly, not from fear. From arithmetic. When betrayal grows from 1 key to 5, it stops being rudeness and becomes planning. At 6:30 I made coffee, opened my notebook and wrote a list. Locks, cabinet, car, mail. Accounts, then below it, what else? By 7 I had called 3 people. A locksmith, my bank manager, Arthur Bell. By 8 I was cheerful. Nothing unnerves controlling people like the happiness of the informed. Caroline entered the kitchen wearing silk confidence and saw my expression. What happened? Good morning. You look strange. I feel organized. She paused, danger instincts functioning at last. Mark came in next, saw the notebook, and silently chose cereal. Wise man, I buttered toast. Busy day, I said. Caroline sat slowly. What kind of busy day? The kind that follows discovery. Her face tightened. I don't know what that means. I know. At 8:15 the locksmith arrived. Broad shoulders, tool case, professional neutrality. Caroline stood so quickly her chair nearly fell. Why is there a locksmith here? I smiled. Because keys multiply. The man introduced himself as Gerard. Good, reliable name. I handed him the spare ring Lily had found. He examined it, then glanced at me. Duplicates, unauthorized. He nodded once. Professionals love clear nouns. Caroline stepped forward. This is unnecessary. No, I said. That was the making of them. Gerard replaced. Front door, back door, garage side entry, my office filing cabinet lock. Even the old trunk in the hall, simply because I was in a mood. New keys cut. Old ones dead. I watched each cylinder turn with deep satisfaction. Caroline looked pale. You're treating me like a criminal. No, I said. Criminals often plan less. Daniel entered halfway through carrying coffees. He took in the scene and whispered, magnificent. I pointed at him. Sit quietly. He obeyed with visible joy. At 10 I drove to the bank. Alone, on purpose. My manager, Mrs. Patel, had known Walter and distrusted charm on sight. Useful woman. I explained that family members had shown unusual curiosity about my accounts and had obtained house and cabinet keys without permission. She listened without interruption, then printed forms. Extra verbal security phrase, in-person ID note, no third-party discussion without direct written authorization, alerts for unusual contact attempts. She slid them across. Would you like to change online access credentials too? Yes. Anyone else know them? I suspect imagination exceeds knowledge. She smiled. We'll reset everything. Beautiful sentence. When I returned home, Arthur Bell was already in the dining room. He had come personally. Cane, coat, irritation. Caroline stood opposite him, arms folded. And I think this is extreme, she was saying. Arthur turned to me. June. Arthur. He sat without invitation. Excellent habit. Then addressed Caroline directly. Did you duplicate keys to this property? I was helping. Not responsive. Everyone does it. Not responsive. I needed access in emergencies. Did the owner authorize it? Silence. He looked pleased. Good, we've found relevance. Mark coughed to hide laughter. Arthur opened a folder. Second matter. Did you seek information regarding your mother's finances or authority status from third parties? Caroline flushed. I asked general questions. Specific enough to mention account branches? Her eyes widened. Interesting. Mrs. Patel had apparently informed him already. Efficient network. Arthur continued. Third matter, did you remove vehicle keys to limit movement? I was worried. Again non-responsive. Did you remove them? Quietly. Yes, he nodded, then folded his hands. Then hear me clearly. Concern without consent is often control. Control with deception is evidence. The room went still. Even Daniel stopped smiling. Caroline's voice trembled. You're making me sound monstrous. Arthur answered instantly. No, your actions did that. There are sentences that change oxygen. That was one. She began crying, real tears now. No audience left to persuade. I was scared, she whispered. Arthur softened 1 degree. Fear explains motive, it does not erase conduct. He turned to me. My recommendation remains unchanged. Which is? Daniel asked. Arthur glanced at him. You'll know if needed. Useful suspense. He left after tea and 1 biscuit. I walked him to the door. Outside, he said quietly, she is close to asking for money. You think so? I know so. When? Soon, pressure is visible. He tapped his cane once. Prepare your no. Back inside, the house was silent. At lunch, Mark found me in the garden. She's behind on cards, he said quietly. I know, she took cash advances. I suspected. She thought if she could stabilize things here, maybe later ask you to invest in a condo project. I turned slowly. A what? He winced. She called it an opportunity. I laughed so hard a sparrow fled the fence. Of course she did. He looked miserable. I'm sorry. For what part? For loving someone who turns panic into plans. I considered him. That is commoner than you think. That evening, Caroline knocked on my bedroom door, properly. I invited her in. She stood by Walter's photograph, unable to meet my eyes. I need to tell you something. There's a queue. She almost smiled, then tears again. I owe 32,000. There it was. At what rates? She blinked. What? Interest rates. She named 3 cards and 1 personal loan, predatory numbers. I nodded slowly. And the condo project, she stared. Mark told you. Reality travels. She sank into the chair. I thought if I could get in early, flip it, pay everything off. Using whose money? Silence. Then I was going to ask for a loan. There, she covered her face. I know how this sounds. No, I said gently. You know how it is. She cried harder. For the first time, I felt more tired than angry. Tomorrow, I said, we discuss terms. Her head lifted. You'd help me. I said terms. Hope is careless with verbs. When she left, I opened my notebook and wrote, tomorrow decides whether this becomes rescue or repetition. I did not help her the next morning. I interviewed her. At 9 sharp, I set the dining table with coffee, not comfort. Yellow legal pad. Calculator. Pens. 3 folders. Caroline arrived looking fragile enough to be strategic. Mark came carrying bank statements. Useful man. Daniel appeared with pastries and curiosity. Less useful but cheerful. I pointed to a chair. Sit. Caroline obeyed. Good start. I folded my hands. How much total? 32,400. Minimum payments, she named them, painful numbers. Income, she named that too, unsteady. Expenses, she hesitated, interesting. Begin, gym membership, beauty subscriptions, streaming services plural, meal kits, storage unit, designer co-working pass. I stared. You're paying monthly to avoid your own house while living in mine. Daniel made a sound into his croissant. I ignored him. Storage unit, for furniture. You have no furniture. It's decorative inventory, Mark whispered. It's pillows. I nearly admired the honesty. I wrote 1 word on the pad, pillows. Then underlined it. Caroline started crying. I know this looks bad. No, I said, bad looked better. She wiped her face. I just wanted one nice thing. You bought 47, Mark coughed. 49, he corrected quietly. She glared. Truth has many enemies, I continued. Do you gamble? No. Drink heavily? No. Drugs? No. Then your addiction is image. Silence. Even Daniel stopped chewing. Caroline whispered, that's cruel. No, I said, that is efficient. I slid 1 folder toward her. Debt snowball plan, card closures, spending freeze. Asset liquidation, therapy recommendation, no loan, she stared. What is this? Help, I thought. Yes, you thought cash, her face hardened. You have the money. I also have knees. Not everything available is yours. Mark almost smiled. She pushed the folder back. So you'll watch me drown. Interesting tactic. No, I said. I'm refusing to become water. She stood abruptly. I knew it. You knew nothing, that is the recurring theme. She stormed upstairs, door slam, heel sounds, cupboard slam for heritage. Daniel exhaled. That went well. It went honestly, Mark sat heavily. She's going to blame you. She already rehearsed it. He rubbed his face. I don't know how to reach her. You stop cushioning impact. He looked up. What does that mean? It means no rescuing her from bills, moods, or consequences. He stared at the folder. I've been doing that for years. Yes, and if I stop, she may begin. That afternoon, Caroline left the house without speaking, returned at 6 with shopping bags. Interesting coping mechanism. I met her in the hallway. What did you buy? Nothing of your concern. I took one bag gently. Inside, candles, cosmetics, linen throw, planner. I handed it back. Your debt is emotional. She burst into tears again. I hate you when you're right. Healthy start. At dinner she did not come down. Mark took a plate upstairs, returned untouched. The next morning something changed. No dramatic speech. No apology, just sound. Trash bags opening, cupboards emptying, drawers sliding. I found Caroline in the guest room surrounded by piles. Shoes. Bags, boxes, unused gadgets still sealed. She looked exhausted. I'm listing everything. I nodded once. Good, I sold 2 bags already. Excellent. I hate strangers coming to the door. Then hate debt more. She almost laughed. That week became a parade of buyers. A woman named Cheryl bought 6 cushions and judged nothing. A young man bought a ring light and called it a steal. 2 students bought decorative shelves. One retired teacher bought 30 candles and said, I'm preparing. Reasonable woman. Daniel became unofficial porter. Mark handled messages. Caroline cried less and typed more. Useful progress. Then on Friday, Arthur Bell returned unannounced. He entered, saw labeled sale piles in the hall, and nodded approvingly. Ah, repentance through marketplace. I offered tea. He accepted. Caroline sat opposite him, wary. He adjusted his glasses. I hear you requested a family loan. She flushed. I asked my mother. You targeted liquidity. I nearly applauded. He continued. Do you know why trusts exist? No, to protect assets from enemies, creditors, and relatives with plans. Daniel snorted tea. Arthur ignored him. He looked at Caroline steadily. Your mother may help you one day, but not while you believe help means access without change. She stared at the table, then whispered, I don't know how to be different. There it was, finally. Arthur softened 1 degree. Good, ignorance admitted is teachable. He stood to leave. At the door he turned. And return the duplicate mailbox key. The room froze. Caroline looked stricken. I looked at her slowly. You made copies of the mailbox too? She burst into tears. Arthur tipped his hat and left. Legend, I held out my hand. Now, she ran upstairs. Returned 1 minute later with a small brass key. Placed it in my palm without meeting my eyes. I closed my fingers around it. The smallest objects can weigh the most. That night after everyone slept, I sat alone in the kitchen. Walter's photograph beside me. My notebook open. I wrote, she is not evil, she is hungry in the wrong direction. Then underneath, still dangerous. The next morning I placed the second folder at Caroline's seat. She opened it carefully. Inside was a simple document, conditional family recovery loan. 5,000, paid directly to highest interest debt only, no cash in hand. Mandatory budget meetings monthly. No new credit, therapy attendance. 1 violation equals terminated. She looked up in shock. You'd do this? I'd test this. Tears filled her eyes. Different tears now, not injury, relief mixed with shame. Why? I answered honestly. Because punishment is easy. Rebuilding is work. She signed without reading twice. Best sign yet. The first month went surprisingly well. That is how trouble returns. Quietly. Caroline attended therapy every Tuesday at 4. I know because she announced it too often at first, then less often once it became real. Mark and she began reviewing spending together on Sundays instead of blaming each other on Thursdays. 3 credit cards were closed. The storage unit of decorative pillows was emptied and surrendered to history. Daniel found part-time work with a kitchen supplier and now spoke casually about invoices as if born practical. Even the house felt steadier. No slammed doors. No suspicious whispers. No future planning folders appearing beside soup. Then, on the 32nd day, I found a brochure on the kitchen island. Luxury coastal residences. Again. This time folded smaller as if secrecy improved nonsense. I said nothing. Instead, I placed it beside Caroline's cereal bowl at breakfast. She looked at it, then at me, then at it again. I can explain. Wonderful. It was just curiosity. Det's favorite hobby, she exhaled. I wasn't buying anything. You were daydreaming with marketing. Mark lowered his coffee slowly. He had learned weather signs. I only looked because they had a resale webinar. Daniel muttered, "Of course they did." I folded my napkin. "Stand up." Caroline blinked. "What? Stand," she did. I opened the third folder. Inside was the signed loan agreement. I slid it across. Clause 6, highlighted. No speculative investment activity, financing inquiries, or new debt exploration during recovery period. She read it. Color left her face. "That's extreme." "No," I said. "That's memory. I didn't do anything. You walked toward it." Mark spoke quietly. "You promised." She turned sharply. "You're on her side again." He surprised us all. "No. I'm on the side that sleeps." Useful man had become admirable. She sat back down heavily. "I hate being treated like a child." "Then stop auditioning." Silence. I tapped the agreement. Loan paused for 30 days. Her eyes widened. "You can't." "I can count." Tears arrived instantly, but different now, not manipulative, panicked. Because consequences had become real and predictable. "I need that payment next week." "Then sell something." I sold everything. I looked around. Designer watch, tablet, second phone. "There is always inventory." She followed my gaze. "No." "Yes." She covered her face. Mark stood. "I'll drive you to the reseller after lunch." She stared at him in disbelief. "You too," he answered softly. "I'm trying to stay married to the version of you that learns." That sentence sat in the room like church bells. Even Daniel looked impressed. That afternoon they left together with a watch, 2 handbags, and the tablet. Returned 3 hours later lighter in objects and mood. Interesting. Pain can oxygenate people when it's honest. At dinner, Caroline placed an envelope beside my plate. "Cash. What is this?" "First repayment." I looked at her. "You sold the watch," she nodded. It was stupid anyway. Progress often insults former purchases. I accepted the envelope. "Good," she swallowed. I almost lied about the brochure. "I know." "How?" "You inhaled before speaking." Daniel laughed into potatoes. The weeks that followed became less dramatic and more difficult. Which is how real change works. No grand speeches, just repetition, budget sheets, hard choices, cooking at home, therapy, canceled subscriptions, used instead of new, embarrassing calls to creditors. Mark began smiling more. Caroline began performing less. One rainy evening she knocked on my bedroom door, properly. "Come in." She stood near Walter's photograph. "I talked about you in therapy." "Condolences to the therapist." She almost smiled. "I said you make me feel small." I waited. She asked when that feeling started. "And, usually right after I do something foolish." I laughed before I could stop myself. Then she laughed too, real laughter, rare and clean. "I think," she said, wiping her eyes, "I confuse shame with being judged." "There." She sat in the chair. "I always thought if I got enough money, enough status, enough beautiful things, I'd feel solid. And now, I think I just wanted boundaries and called them luxury." Good line. I wished I'd said it first. At Christmas, the house filled again, but differently. Mark cooked roast beef without resentment. Daniel brought gifts paid for with actual earnings and mentioned this 3 times. Lily asked for investing books. Ethan asked only for Wi-Fi. Reasonable child. Caroline handed me a wrapped package after dessert. Inside was a new key ring. Simple brass. Engraved with one sentence, "Ask first." I laughed until tears came, then clipped my house keys onto it. Months later, when women my age whispered that their grown children had become very concerned, right after asking about keys, passwords, or property, I always told them the truth. Never confuse worry with entitlement. And if they take your keys, drive to a lawyer first.